Hiya, well, a few weeks break, but we're back with a blog. I've just enjoyed doing some fishing shows and fishing a few small open matches for the last few weeks after quite an intense winter, but I kind of see the start of April as the start of my season, if you like, because this is when all the bigger events start and, you know, running into the end of the river season last year, it's sort of how I've always treated it, because winter is one sort of block of events. So I was quite looking forward to going to the Sensas Festival, which is in a place called Chateau Dun. It's about an hour and a half south of Paris, and I like the idea of Sensas running a festival. You know, it was it's well attended. There's 72 anglers there. The standard is incredibly high. 13 anglers went from the UK this year, and such a great standard of anglers. A lot of England internationals in that group, and some great anglers as well. So it's just one of those where if you're going to go away to these sorts of things, you know the standard is going to be high and you've got to do well to compete. The event's held over a complex of lakes and some stretches of a local river. They're quite lucky, really, that they've got a nice set of lakes and a nice small stretches of river as well. Typical French match fishing, you get to park behind your peg. There's nowhere that you don't park behind your peg. It always interests me, actually, because the banks are terrible on the river and the lakes. They're not very comfortable for your box or platforms at all. And you know, fortunately, with modern boxes and adjustable legs, you don't have to worry too much. But you might be sat quite high up off the water, and it just does amuse me because in the UK we often walk a long way for our fishing, but then when you get there, there's some comfortable areas to sit. So it's a little bit of a you know, like a one against the other, pitting one against the other, really. But I think I'd probably pick parking behind my peg every time, because it really is nice to be able to just park up and you're not worrying about what you need to take or not take out of your van or car. So that's quite a nice little touch. The lakes are really good. We went last year and the lakes were difficult. Not very good at all, really, if I'm being honest. I was a bit disappointed, but we went in May and I think the fish was spawning. This time we've gone and we actually practiced on the lakes first, and I had a fantastic day's fishing. It was approximately 10 foot deep, and I've caught small skimmers for the first couple of hours, then an odd bigger skimmer mixed in, a small carasio, some big rudd. Managed to start feeding balls of ground bait by hand, quite aggressive fishing. Bloodworm and joker mainly as the feed and hook bait, but plenty of dead maggots and casters. The new Sooner Baits bream ground bait mixed with a little bit of lean, and it was just fantastic. 1.5 grams, nice light elastics, and I started catching odd bigger skimmers, £2, £1, and I had probably £30 by the end of our 5-hour practice. And I just thought, wow, fantastic fishing. Really, really good. The downside to that was that I found out that we'd actually practiced on the wrong side of the lake. They'd sprayed the numbers on and it turned out they needed to move it to the other side. So that was a little bit disappointing, but it's the same lake, so you know, not too much loss there. I did sort of play around with me waggler, trying to get me catapulting right and what have you, just in case I needed it. But I thought I would probably not need it because pole would play a main part. We'll sort of come to that a bit later. But the other 3 lakes, because the sections are split into 9 peg sections, 4 on the lakes, 4 on the river. You have to have a day on both, so you have to have a day on the lakes and down the river. And the lakes are similar, but one of the lakes has got a lot of catfish in it, which changes your approach slightly, and one of the other lakes has got a few smaller carp. But generally the skimmer fishing, the principles are quite similar, so it's not too bad at all, really. Just that one with the catfish that I probably not really, I wouldn't want to draw on that lake if I'm being honest, or you know, if it was my festival I'd probably consider one on one of the other lakes, only not because I don't like catfish, because I quite enjoy catching catfish because they can be aggressive feeders. You know, and you can give them some bait and you have to get into a rhythm. However, you've got to sort of set up a different set of gear and hooks and everything else. So if I was going to go And of course I hadn't practiced there, so should I have drawn there, I hadn't even had a practice at catfish fishing, which would have been nice if I'd gone all that way. So you can see, really trying to get the lake similar would have been good. But you know, they are good fishing certainly. Excuse me. The river's interesting. Obviously there's no close season in France. Well, across all of Europe, to be honest. And that means that you can fish on the river. A lot of small skimmers, small roach, some bleak. Strangely, no perch. You catch 1 or 2 perch, but like on the UK river, perch are very dominant, I always think. Hardly any perch, so that's quite weird, really, because on harder rivers, which I would class this river, it's called the Loire, I would class the Loire as a harder river. You haven't got any perch to make up your weight, so I think you have to start thinking about bleak and maybe an odd bonus bream to boost your weight, along with these more bread and butter type fish, so small roach and small skimmers. We had a day's practicing on there and it was hard. I had 1 kilo 600, which was all right, to be fair. I mean, those that we practiced with, Alan had 2 kilos. But the rest had 500 grams, that sort of weight, so it was very difficult. And I realised then that it was going to be hard come the match. Going into the match, on the first day I drew on the river, at a bit called Montclair. Last year there'd been 30-40 pound of bream caught in and around the area, so I thought I have to be a little bit positive, just in case these skimmers and bigger bream feed. So I fed Sunabait's bream and river in some Terre de Rivière, and I put some joker in about 10 balls, but I also put casters, chop worms and other baits because I wanted to have a chance of catching odd skimmers and things like that. I think in hindsight that was a mistake because no bigger fish really fed at all, which was really disappointing. However, I was expecting that, so my rigs were ready, and I caught really well to start with, small skimmers and roach, but they just faded away. Didn't catch many roach at all, odd bleak and little skimmers really. And anyway, news came down that the bottom 3 pegs in my section had all caught roach consistently well, and there'd been a big bream caught in the middle, leaving me in the bottom 5 pegs as the best weight. I had 2 kilos 780. The end peg on my right just had 2 kilos, where end pegs were absolutely dominant over the weekend. So it's a little bit disappointing. I came 5th in my 9 pegs, and those of you who follow the blog know I've had a great few months, really, really great. So, you can't win all the time, and that was a little bit of a disappointment really, that I'd gone all that way, and I never felt I had a chance. There was a 5 kilo, a 4.5 kilo, a 4 kilo. I really don't think that I could have caught that on that particular day. There wasn't the roach feeding. The following day on that stretch, the roach were completely at my end, and the end where I'd been dominated the weights. So that, I think that it was just a bit patchy, and I was a bit disappointed that they didn't feed on the day for us. So I went into the second day knowing really I'm only fishing for a section. Some notable English results. Sean Ashbeard won his section with 13 kilos on the lakes. A brilliant performance, and Alan Scotton was second in his section with 11 kilos. They were on the 2 end pegs, which I do think makes a difference. However, the end pegs generally tended to catch like that little bit more, but not as much more as these 2 guys did. When you get class anglers like that on the fish, they really just do stand out. I think 6 kilos was next to those 2 in the section, so I think the rest of the guys never really had a chance, unfortunately, on that day. So there were some good results. Des Ship had 14 kilos on one of the lakes on Slider, so that was interesting. So going into the next day, I actually drew near where Des had been the day before. I was a little bit concerned because the 2 end pegs again had caught on the pole the day before, with the rest of the section not catching on the pole at all. And I was next to one of the end pegs. I was next to Cameron Hughes, who's a fantastic angler. and I decided I had to set up the slider and the pole, of course, and I've been practicing a lot with the slider over the last 6 months. I've done a lot of slider fishing, and it went really well. I was catching well. Well, I say well, I had 3 or 4 big bream, which was big skimmers, which was what you were targeting. Cameron hadn't caught any decent fish at all, and the rest of the section was struggling, so it all looked like it was going to plan. Unfortunately, in the last 2 hours, the end pegs completely came to life, and Cameron showed how good he is by catching 12 kilos 900. Literally in the last 2 hours. I should think he barely had a pound with 2 hours to go, and then just caught one every chuck in, which shows unfortunately the nature of the fishing, because I was next to him and never even had a bite on the pole. So I can't really confess that it was one of the fairest venues I've ever been to, but with all fishing there's always a method and ways to do better. I felt I could have improved and done things better both days, which, for me, that's the key when we all go fishing. You don't always have the greatest of weekends. I've been very fortunate since I've been doing the blogs that I've been coming on here and telling you that it's gone well and everything's been going right. But when you don't, when you go somewhere and it's a little bit patchy and you have to be on a good peg to compete, not necessarily win, but to compete. You still should be able to look back at what you've done and take and learn from that, and that's what I'm trying to do from this trip. I know that with my slider fishing, I fish quite big bunches of bait a lot of the time for bigger skimmers. I think if I'd have fished a bit closer, I fished 50 turns. Maybe if I'd have fished, say, 30 turns, I could have fished for everything that swims and maybe caught quite, a bit more. But I mean, I weighed 5 kilos 500. I wasn't going to catch 12 kilos 900. That's just not going to happen. So you've just got to look at how you can improve your own performance. I think on the river the day before, maybe if I hadn't have fed so much other bait, I would have caught a few more small fish. Again, I don't think I would have caught 5 kilos or even 4.5 kilos. But I might have caught 4 kilos and come third. You don't know. But I didn't feel that I fished a bad match. So just one of those where you just try and pick up little bits of information. It's great to fish amongst some of the French internationals. See what they're doing, see what they're using, see their rigs, their ground bait, the way they carry about the matches. There was Spanish anglers there, Belgium anglers there, obviously some great English anglers. So you're always learning and trying to pick up on things. Big congratulations to Sean Ashby on winning the event. Won his section on the second day. Caught some bleak and caught a few small fish. Very, very hard section he was in second day. I think as it conspired, he probably would have caught enough bleak from most pegs because there wasn't a great deal caught, and he is, one of the best small fish anglers in the world. Absolutely no doubt about that. Top 5. That's the biggest compliment I can pay Sean. He is absolutely fantastic. So give him 2 pegs and he's won the event and the €4,000 top prize. So I was really pleased for him. I was really pleased that one of the English guys won it because there was only 13 of us there, but I felt that we were capable, and we ended up with 4 or 5 anglers in the top 12, which I think is very, very impressive. Myself, with my 2 results, I ended about halfway in the festival. Certainly not my greatest ever festival, but like I said, I do know that in hindsight I didn't have a chance of getting in the top 10 from my pegs, but you have to try and take things to learn and things to improve and look to be better next time, which anybody who does that, I think when people do sometimes experience, say, a bad run, when their draw isn't quite going for them, when they do get half a chance, confidence can be low, or they've stopped thinking about their fishing, so they don't catch as many fish. So I'll certainly go into my next match open-minded, trusting in my own ability and thinking about the feeding clearly. And if I get a decent peg, hopefully I'll pick back up where I was a couple of weeks ago. So, all is not lost, certainly not. Obviously, it's been Easter weekend this weekend, and you've all probably been out commercial fishing. So obviously this is a bit off topic, I suppose. but with some lovely warm weather. I know the fish will have been shallow this weekend. You know, make sure now shallow rigs are in the box for the weeks coming forward. Have them ready, have them prepared. Catapults ready, check everything's right, you know, because it's going to play a big part, you know. So really keep that in the forefront of your thoughts for the next few weeks. And I'll catch up with you next week for another vlog. Look forward to seeing you then. Cheers, bye.